Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Verse. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if the Uzumaki clan returned and found Naruto betrayed by the council but loved by Yuga, Makoto and Hinata? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfi. So Ni-chan, what are we going to be doing today? Naruto asked as they made it out of the forest of death. He hadn't been out of the forest in a very long time, but he still had some memories of running for his life from the angry villagers. Well Odo, we are first going to get you some new clothes. Then we are going to go shopping for your room. Kakashi explained as he eyed some of the villagers that were looking at him, Naruto, and Yuga. Naruto didn't know what to do. He could now feel the emotions of the villagers and it was starting to affect him. He knew that people didn't like him because of the fox in his gut. He was fine with that, but now he could literally feel how people felt and he was scared of it. Yuga saw that Naruto was getting anxious and put a hand on his head and rubbed it. What's wrong Naru-kun? She asked as she tried to make him feel better. All the villagers, they hate me, Naruto whispered to his sister who scowled at the people who were walking by them. Some of them scowled at them, others just ignored them altogether. Don't pay attention to them Odo. Yuga said as she picked up the 4-year-old. She held him close and carried him close to her chest in a protective manner. They don't matter. The only people who matter are you, your Ka-chan, Kashi-kun, and I. She said sweetly, to which Kakashi nodded his head. But, I can still feel them. The glares, the anger. He whispered to his big sister who frowned. But you can feel my love and see my smile. Yuga smiled at him and he gave a small one back. Focus on the good feelings inside of the village. There may not be much, but it will make you feel much better in the long run Naru. Naruto thought about what was said and the longer he thought, the stronger the warmth radiating from Yuga and Kakashi got. He could feel their chakra almost wrapping around him, and it felt so warm. It felt amazing and he loved it. Okay, I'll only focus on the good and happiness in the village. He said with a wide smile as he burrowed deeper into the neck of Yuga. Alright, Odo, Kakashi said with a shout which made some of the Anbu around raise an eyebrow behind their masks. When did Kakashi-senpai get a little brother? They all collectively asked themselves as they watched the pair walk past them. After about 20 minutes of walking, Naruto, Kakashi, and Yuga walked up to a clothing store named Ninja Wares. They walked in and smiled at one of the attendants who was restocking the store. Welcome to Ninja Wares. Is there anything I can help you with today? She asked as she looked up at the trio. Nope, we're just here to pick up some clothes for our Odo. Ka-chan wanted to get him a new wardrobe, so we're going to be here for a while. Yuga explained as she shifted Naruto to her hip. Alright, we can do that for you. Just let us know what you want to buy in bulk and we'll have it ordered. The attendant said with a warm smile on her face. Thank you, Kakashi said as they walked past her into the kids section of the store. Alright Naru, what do you want? Yuga asked as she started sifting through the clothes that were on the racks. Wait, I get to pick? He asked excitedly, which made Yuga and Kakashi look at him funny. Yeah, what do you think that we were just going to give you clothing and expect you to wear it? Kakashi asked his brother who at this point had stars in his eyes. Well, yeah, that's what the mean lady used to do. Then she kicked me out. When I was in the forest, my friends and I hunted animals and skinned them. Ka-chan taught me how to make thread and sew to make clothing. He explained to his sibling who looked at him with wonder. Wow Odo, that's really cool. Yuga said as he smiled at the small boy. Thanks, Nei-chan. He smiled as he walked towards some of the clothing. Ka-chan, are you awake? He asked his mother who had just gotten up and made herself a cup of hot tea. Yes Naru, I just woke up and made tea. What's up? She asked as she sipped her tea. We're getting clothing and I wanted to know what you wanted me to get. He said as he sifted through some of the items and felt them in his hands. Well, I would get some casual clothing. Clothing that you can play in and walk around it. I would also get some training clothing so that you can train and exercise in. Ask Yuga about training clothing and she'll get some for you. Akari watched her charge shop and was very happy when he picked out clothing that was dark red and orange. Well, he definitely got his mother's color palette. She smiled to herself as thought back to her second container. After about an hour, Naruto had picked out several outfits ranging from green shorts and white shirts to orange shirts and black pants. He had thought about his time in the forest and how he needed to be ready for anything, so he blended his casual and training styles into one all-around wardrobe. When he went to show Kakashi, he smiled and nodded his head. Yuga, look at what Naru kicked out. He yelled, which got Yuga's attention. She walked over and smiled at her brother. Good job, Naruto. You picked both stylish and practical. They even have pockets so that you can carry lots of stuff. She said, which made Naruto smile widely. Alright, I think we've got all the clothing that we need now, so why don't we go get some stuff for your bedroom? Where do I get a mask like Ni-chan? Naruto asked, much to the surprise of Kakashi. Why do you want a mask like mine, Oto? He asked as he kneeled down to Naruto's level. Well, you're my Ni-chan. I want to be just like you, and when I'm older I'll get a sword like Ni-chan. Naruto yelled at his siblings, who were still stunned at what he said. Why you want to be just like us? Yuga asked with a shaky voice. Well, yeah, you're my Nei and Ni-chans. My friends always told me that they grow up to be just like their Nei and Ni-chans, so why can't I? Naruto asked as he looked at the two with a giant smile on his face. Yuga walked over and engulfed Naruto in a hug and held him close to her body. She left him and Kakashi then walked over and hugged him. Naruto was so happy because both their chakras were bright and warm. Kakashi then pulled out a scroll that had the kanji for mask and opened it. There were several masks of different sizes in it. He then picked up one that would fit Naruto's face and he handed it to him. Naruto, this is a Hitaki family tradition. Once you put this one, most people probably don't recognize you, and those that will think we are related. Here you go. He smiled at the boy, who smiled back at him. But, when we are in the house you are to remove it because I want to see that brilliant smile of yours. Yuga demanded the boy, who nodded his head quickly. Wow, she's scary when she wants something. Almost like Ka-chan. He thought to himself. What was that, Naru-chan? Akari asked in a sweet tone that all mothers had when they were angry or upset. Nothing, Ka-chan. Just that I love you lots and you're the best. He said with a megawatt smile to his mom in his head. That's what I thought, she said as she went back to reading some of the books that Kami had brought her when she last visited her. There were thousands of them in the library in the seal and were meant to keep her occupied when not training Naruto. Kakashi and Yuga looked at each other as they watched Naruto zone out while they were talking to him, and sweat dropped. He's talking to the fox, isn't he? Kakashi asked, which got a nod from Yuga. Why are you both just staring at me? Naruto asked, which made the two Anbu agents' sweat drops grow even larger. Nothing, Naru. Let's go check out. Then we can go pick out the stuff for your bedroom. Yuga said as she grabbed the clothing that was in Naruto's hands. She walked over to the cashier and started paying for the clothing and ordering some items in bulk. Once she was finished paying, the trio walked out of the store and down the street to a furniture store. They went in and spent a few hours picking out Naruto's futon, desk, chair, and bookshelves. Naruto had never gotten so much stuff before in his life. He had had to make all the stuff he had in the cave, and all he remembered from the orphanage was pain and loneliness. It was now around 1:30 in the afternoon when they finished all the shopping that they were going to do. So Kakashi had the great idea of getting lunch. Oto, do you want any lunch? Kakashi asked as he looked at the small boy in Yuga's arms. Sure. We can go catch some stuff. I thought I saw a rabbit run across the street, Naruto said as he pointed to where he thought he saw the rabbit. No, sweetie, we were thinking foods that are already made for us, Yuga said, which made Naruto's eyes widen. You mean like in those buildings they tell me I can't enter? He asked. His eyes widened with hope. Yes, Oto, those are called restaurants. People go there to eat. There are places you can get ramen, dango, barbecue, sushi, and other foods. Kakashi explained to his brother, who nodded his head. Here, let's try the barbecue place. Who knows, our friends might even be there. Yuga exclaimed, much to Naruto's displeasure. He suddenly got very nervous and started trying to move closer to Yuga. What's the wrong, Oto? We're going to eat with other people. He asked nervously, which caught both teens off guard. Well, yeah, Oto, I mean that's if our friends are even there. I haven't really been in contact with them in a while, so I don't really know. Kakashi explained to the child as they walked into the restaurant. Yeah, Naru-kun, Yuga ruffled his hair as they walked up to the waiter. It'll be okay. It doesn't look like any of our friends are even. Kakashi, my eternal rival. Maybe we should have gone to a different place to eat, Kakashi mumbled as he tried to get them to leave the barbecue place. Guy, did you say Kakashi? A feminine voice asked. Yes, sir. I know that too cool attitude anywhere. The man now identified as Guy said. Guy, would you calm down? You're going to scare away all the other people here. A male voice said to the man. Yuga and Kakashi looked at each other and sighed. They knew that this could have happened, but they didn't think that it would. They took one look at a now terrified Naruto and started walking towards the table where all the noise was. Hey guys, Yuga said as she shifted Naruto onto her hips so that she could carry him easier. Everyone looked at Yuga and their eyes widened. They saw Naruto and he instantly tried to hide in Yuga's stomach. She sighed and sat Naruto down while she pulled out her chair. She then placed Naruto protectively in her lap and smiled at her friends. Damn, Kakashi didn't even marry her and you've already got a kid, a man said with an unlit cigarette in his mouth said with a smirk on his face. Asuma, that probably isn't even their kid. I mean, he looks like he's 3. A woman with long black hair and red eyes said as she facepalmed. Kakashi, my eternal rival, you have beaten me at having children. Your flames of youth are brighter than ever, said a teen in a green tracksuit. He had a bowl cut and large black eyebrows which scared Naruto. Guy, shut up. You're scaring him, Kakashi said in light annoyance at his overly eccentric friend. I am sorry, my. Guy, shut up. The entire restaurant yelled in unison, which made everyone at the table sweat drop. Anyway, back to the matter at hand, that can't be their child. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. The woman with red eyes said as she pointed to the small cowering child in Yuga's lap. I don't know, Kurenai-chan, genetics can go some crazy things, said a girl with brown hair pressed flat on top of her head. She had 2 red markings lining her cheeks and black eyes. Hana, Yuga has purple hair and Kakashi has silver hair. How would their child have blonde hair? Let alone the eyes. Yuga and Kakashi have black eyes. The child has blue ones. I think it's safe to say it's not their child. Kurenai argued with her friend. And you'd be correct. This is not our child, Kakashi finally said, which made everyone at the table's eyes widen in surprise. Then who is he? A teen with short purple hair said. She was wearing a fishnet shirt and a sweat jacket which was unzipped halfway. Anko, language he's 4. Yuga yelled, which made her friend smirk. I don't think the kid is listening considering his head is literally in your tits, Anko said as she pointed to Naruto, whose head was indeed buried in Yuga's chest. You never did answer the question of who he is. A boy with a straw in his mouth said. His name is Naruto and we are his adoptive siblings, Kakashi explained, which got confused looks from everyone. How are you his adoptive siblings? The teen with a straw asked as he raised his eyebrow. Well, His parents asked us to take care of him in case something happened, Kakashi explained cryptically to his friends. You know, if you really look at him, he kinda looks like Kush, Anko said before being silenced by Yugo's hand flew to her mouth before she could say anything else. Suddenly, Kurenai's eyes widened as she looked at Naruto's appearance more closely and she looked at Yuga who nodded her head. Hi Naruto, my name is Kurenai, she said in a soft voice so that she wouldn't scare the child. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Anko and it's very nice to meet you. The teen said with a smirk on her face as she realized whose kid this was and why Yuga and Kakashi were taking care of him. I'm Asuma Sarutobi, the teen with a cigarette in his mouth. It's good to meet you. Young one, my name is Mito Guy. It's nice to see someone whose flames of youth are so strong so young, Guy said as he jumped into his nice guy pose. Naruto saw this and instantly turned and burrowed himself in Yugao's chest which made her sweat drop. He must really love them if he's doing this in public. Well Guy, you now scare kids. How do you feel? Kakashi asked with a slight smirk on his face. Kakashi, you wound me with that attitude. Guy said with anime tears running down his face. Well, I'm Hana Inuzuka, Hana said with a smile on her face. It's nice to meet your pup. He smells like foxes. So I guess he's that kid. Oh well, he looks like a cute kid. I'm Genma and it's good to see you kid, Genma said in a disinterested voice. He looked the kid over and smirked. I'm Naruto, Naruto whispered as he turned around to face the people. Well Naruto, do you like your siblings? Kurenai asked with a smile on her face. Hi, they are really nice and they got me clothes and a new bed. Naruto said a little louder as he was starting to get more comfortable with the group. That's great. They are really good friends of ours. Asuma said as he turned on the grill in front of them so that they could cook the meats that had just arrived. I wish I had a friend, the blonde mumbled under his breath but everyone heard him. Don't worry Oto, once we eat lunch we'll go to the park, and then you'll meet some friends, Kakashi said as he passed Yuga a plate of meat for her and Naruto. She smiled at him and started cutting up the meats for Naruto. Yeah, it'll be fun. Yuga said as she cut his food. I hope so, the boy mumbled to himself. Kid, don't look so down. Anko said with a smile. I'm sure you'll meet someone at the park. There are plenty of children in the village. Trust me, we had to babysit them when we were younger. She said, which made everyone chuckle a bit. Hi, Naruto said with a slight smile on his face. After a few hours of sitting and talking to each other, the group departed so that they could get back to what they were doing. For some it was going to train, others were going to get a mission, and some were going to run 100 laps around the entire village. Keeping his word, Kakashi took Yuga and Naruto to a local park where they saw children play. Yuga let Naruto down from her shoulder and smiled at him. Now remember Oto, have fun and be yourself. Don't worry Nei-chan, I won't let you down, Naruto said with a smile on his face. He then raced off towards the sandbox and started to play. He spent a few minutes playing there but then he heard someone yelping in pain. Ka-chan, did you hear that? He asked his mom who actually had been paying attention to the situation. Yes, I did. It sounded like a little girl was in trouble. She said as she bookmarked her book to be more observant of her son's surroundings. Alright, I'm gonna go find her. He took off into the direction of the noise and soon found himself at the scene of three much older boys picking on a girl with shoulder-length blue hair and very pale eyes. Ha! Look at what stupid pale eyes did. One of the boys said to the girl. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't mean to hit you. She stuttered as she kneeled on the ground in front of the boys. Well, you did, so now you have to pay the price. Another one of the boys said as he shoved the girl back into the ground. Naruto had had enough. He hated to see people or animals get picked on by older animals, so he ran in front of the boys and started yelling. Hey, Why are you hitting this beautiful girl? He called me beautiful. And he's defending me. The girl excitedly thought as she watched her savior speak. Hey punk. Get lost, we just want to make that pale-eyed freak pay for hitting us. The leader of the Bais shouted at Naruto. Hey buddy, it doesn't look like you're that hurt, so why you just leave before you actually get hurt? Naruto said as he subtly went into his taijutsu stance. Oh yeah, and what are you going to do if we don't? He asked the short blonde who growled at all three of them. Well, I'll do this. Naruto then sprinted to the first one and kicked him in the leg. As the boy was falling, he then jabbed him in the throat and shoved him to the ground by grabbing his shoulder. The second boy was coming at Naruto from behind, but Naruto was able to predict where he was coming from. He leapt over the child and slammed his leg into the teen's middle back. This caused the boy to go sprawling into the ground. The leader had watched all this take place and was very angry at Naruto. You think you can just walk in here and hurt my friends because I hurt the freak? He yelled but didn't get a response from Naruto, who simply stared at him. No one injures or yells at my friends and gets away with it. Naruto yelled as he changed the boy and jumped over him. He grabbed the large boy's arms and flipped him over, making him land on his back. Naruto then twisted the boy's arm and punched him in the face. Once the boys were now unconscious, Naruto turned his head to see the girl he had saved staring at him in wonder and awe. Hey, I'm sorry if I scared you, Naruto said quietly. No, it should be me apologizing to you. The girl said with a stutter. Should have been Strogner. Naruto looked at the girl and smiled at her. Don't worry about it, I'll always help my friends, that is if you still want to be friends with me after this, Naruto said as he shyly smiled at her. Why you want to be my friend? She asked him and he nodded his head much to her surprise. Well yeah, you're really pretty and you have beautiful eyes. Naruto said with a wide smile as a blush appeared on her face. I'll be your friend. The girl said with a blush on her face. Yay! Naruto shouted as he ran to hug the girl, who in turn blushed even brighter. I've never had a friend before. He shouted at the top of his lungs. I've never had a friend either, she said quietly into his chest. Once the pair stopped hugging, Naruto led her to his sandbox. He then sat down and patted the ground in front of him so that she could sit. What do we do now? He asked her and she shrugged. Maybe we should say ORN names and stuff about ourselves, the girl said softly, which made Naruto nod his head. Okay. My name is NarutoUzumaki Datebayo. He said with a wide smile. I like playing with foxes, my Nei-chan, my Ni-chan, and now you. He said, which made the girl blush even more. My name is Hinata Hyuga. Hinata stuttered but smiled shyly. I like my K Ka-sama, and T2-sama, I also L like F flowers A and N now you. One, Hinata said with a slight blush on her cheeks. Alright Hinata-chan, let's build a sandcastle together. Naruto said as he grabbed a bucket and started filling it with sand. Oh okay Naruto-kun, she smiled as she helped her friend build the castle. This went on for hours. They played in the sandbox. Hinata taught Naruto how to play on the swings, they played tag, they even placed hide and seek. They were having a blast until Hinata's mom walked over to them and said that she had to go home. Do you have to go, Hinata-chan? Naruto asked as he tried to get her to stay for a little longer. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, but Hinata has to get ready. There's a big party happening tonight at the compound. Hitomi said as she smiled at the boy. Wait, is that? He acts just like her but looks like him. Okay, but will I see you again? He asked as he sniffed a little. Of course you will, Hitomi said with a smile on her face. You'll see her real soon. Sarutobi is going to hear about this. Naruto smiled and ran to hug his friend one last time before she left. It was getting dark out and so he went to go find Kakashi and Yuga who were asleep in each other's arms. Nakan! He yelled, which woke up both teens in a huff. Huh! Yuga groaned as she looked around until she saw Naruto standing in front of her smiling. Oh Naruto, it's you. Did you have a good time at the park? Hi, I met a new friend. Her name is Hinata. Naruto shouted as he climbed into her lap to sit. That's great Oto, but it's time to go home and eat dinner. Then we go to sleep and figure out what we do tomorrow. Kakashi said with an eye smile. The trio left the park and headed to Kakashi and Yugao's apartment. They had been friends for years and decided that when they joined Anbu that they would share an apartment together so that they weren't alone. They had a 3-bedroom 2.5-bath apartment near the center of Konoha. Since they were in Anbu, they could afford the place along with money to save and send. Naruto entered his new house and immediately started running around the place. He looked at all the cool stuff that was there. In the apartment, there was a nice kitchen, a sitting room with a sofa and love seat, a TV, and a large window. The next room he found was one of the bathrooms. Then he found a room that was colored deep blue. The bed was made and there were some photos and spare dog Anbu masks in it. He left that room and walked towards the room next to it. This room was colored light purple and had some pictures in a rack with swords on it. Once he left that room, he found the room that was going to be his. There wasn't anything except for a few boxes and some cleaning supplies. Well Oto, it looks like you found where your room is going to be. Kakashi said from behind him. Yeah, I can't wait. He said with a smile on his face before they left and went to the kitchen. The trio sat down and ate Yugao's stir-fry. They talked for a few hours until it was around 10:30 p.m. Since Naruto didn't have a room yet, Yuga let him sleep with her since he was already attached to her. They entered her room and she changed him into one of her t-shirts. This one was light gray and said, "Property of a kunoichi." Yuga kissed him on the forehead and wrapped her arms around him so that they would go to sleep. Little did he know he wouldn't be getting much soon. Hyuga compound. It was late at night when a lone figure crept into the Hyuga compound. He wore a blank mask and had a large empty sack in his hands. He jumped from rooftop to find who he was looking for, Hinata Hyuga, the heiress of the Hyuga clan. He stopped at one of the windows and smiled to himself. I found her, he whispered to no one in particular. Hinata was sitting in her room thinking about her new friend. He had saved her from the bullies and had become her friend. He had even called her beautiful. She blushed at the thought of him calling her that. She smiled at the thought of them seeing each other again. Little did she know she would get her to wish. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from her window. A masked man had entered her room and was towering over her. Who are you? She asked the man who merely chuckled at her. Who me? He walked over and chopped her on the juncture of her neck and skull. I'm your worst nightmare. Naruto's apartment. Naruto woke up with a start from his slumber in Yugao's bosom. He looked around and sighed to himself, but then he felt it. He felt a bad feeling in his head. Almost like warning sirens were going off. What's going on? He thought to himself as he sat up in the bed that he and Yuga were currently sharing. Then it hit him again. Ka-chan, are you awake? He asked his mother. He frowned when he didn't get a response from her, meaning that she was asleep. Great. Looks like I'm solo for this. He looked around and didn't see anything in danger, but then he felt it for the third time. He could feel that something bad was happening. He could feel the anxiety and fear in the chakra. Wait, that's it. Naruto yelled in his head. He quickly closed his eyes and sat to expel his chakra faintly so that he wouldn't wake up Yuga. After 3 minutes of searching, he found it. Hinata was scared of something, and she was moving. Naruto looked at the clock and saw that it read 2:38 a.m. and his eyes widened. She's supposed to be asleep, not moving. I have to see what's wrong. He got out of bed as silently as he could and looked around for anything that could be helpful. He noticed that he could actually see perfectly fine in the dark and found Yugao's kunai and shuriken pouches. He quickly strapped them onto his waist and walked to put on his sandals. Once he put them on, he opened the window in her room and walked out of it. He kneeled on the ledge and closed it. Ka-chan, wake up! He internally screamed in his mind in an attempt to wake up his mother. Still not getting an answer, he decided to just follow his training and sprinted to where Hinata's chakra signature was. After 10 minutes of all-out sprinting, he spotted a figure with a large bag slung over his shoulder. His eyes widened as he realized what was happening. "Hey, mister, what are you doing out here so late at night?" Naruto asked the man who suddenly stopped in his tracks. "Kid, what are you going here?" the ninja asked as he turned around to face the 4-year-old. "Wondering why you have my friend in that bag," he yelled, praying that someone would hear him. "Who her?" The ninja shrugged his shoulders and smiled under his mask. "I could tell you, but I know you aren't going to live long enough to say anything about it." Suddenly the man released a volley of shuriken at the child, who skillfully dodged them all. Naruto grabbed some from his pouch and launched them at the man, who also dodged. "You're not bad for a pint. Let's see you handle this," the ninja yelled as he slung the bag that Hinata was in off his shoulder. He got in a stance and blurred towards the blonde, who barely had time to dodge a kick coming to his head. Naruto countered with his own kick to the shin, which caused the Chunin to stumble. Naruto capitalized on this with a punch aimed directly at the ribs, but was a fake for a punch to the hip. The ninja growled at the hit and aimed a kick at Naruto's shoulder, but instead kicked him in the side of the head, causing him to get launched into a wall. "Well, it looks like you weren't able to keep up after all," he yelled, only for Naruto to turn into a cloud of air. A clone. Naruto reappeared behind the man and launched a kick for the man's back. It sent him flying towards a wall, but the ninja was able to stop himself before he hit it. "Alright, I'm getting tired of this." The ninja started to form hand seals and gather chakra. "It looks like a fire jutsu, so I better get a water one ready." He looked around and saw that there wasn't any water anywhere. "Shoot. Well, let's hope this works." He started going through his own hand signs. Fire style. Fire flame jutsu. Water style. Water ball jutsu. A stream of fire collided with several large water balls, which caused a large boom to go off in the surrounding area. This was what finally woke up Akari, who was enjoying her sleep. "Naru, what was that sound?" she asked as she looked through his eyes and screamed. "Naruto, what the is going on?" she yelled at her son, who was in the middle of dodging several fireballs. "Oh, so now you wake up," he yelled internally as he went through hand seals once again. "Water style. Water whip." He yelled and prayed that it would work. Suddenly, out of thin air, 3 whips of water formed and hit the Chunin square in the chest. "Alright, it worked. You brat," the ninja yelled as he felt the blood leaking from his chest as he had been hit by that attack. "Now both you and the girl are going to die." He went through hand seals and slammed the ground. Lightning style. Lightning tag. Suddenly several medium-sized lightning bolts came cutting through the air and were aiming at the blonde. He was able to dodge all by one and it nicked him in the arm, but he wasn't too hurt. Naruto groaned as he tried to think of something. He then started going through seals again. Earth style. Rock wall. A wall of earth was erected between the Chunin and Hinata and Naruto. He grabbed the bag with Hinata in it and cut it open to reveal her still unconscious. "Hinata, wake up," he shouted as he tried to shake her. He saw that his wall was barely holding and decided to pick her up and run. He was running when he heard another jutsu be called. Lightning style. Bolt bits. Out of the Chunin hand came a barrage of lightning bolts heading straight for both Hinata and Naruto. Naruto looked at the lightning and his eyes widened. "Ka-chan, I'm not going to make it." He looked at the bolts and then suddenly something happened. His chakra output skyrocketed and he felt like the world was in black and white while being slowed down. He was able to see each individual bolt of lightning and was able to time twits, jumps, and ducks for each other. He looked at the man and flared his chakra again. He continued to run with Hinata back to her compound but was caught when he started slipping on mud. Shoot. He didn't have time to look back before he was stuck. Ka-chan, any suggestions? Jump and try to stick to something. She yelled from his head. He complied and landed on a wall. He continued to sprint back to her compound and flare his chakra hoping someone would notice it. He was almost at the compound when he could sense chakra coming towards him. You gotta be kidding me. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. He made 2 shadow clones while he ran and heard them both utter different wind attacks. This caused the fireballs to clash and disperse, sending a large amount of light into the area. You brat, I'm killing you. He yelled as he charged the blonde who was still carrying Hinata. Naruto saw the gates and made a split-second decision. He threw Hinata with all his strength and prayed that she wouldn't break anything. Once he threw Hinata, he reached into his kunai pouch and started throwing kunai as best as he could. Some of the kunai were successful and most weren't, but they did their jobs. He was able to slow down the assailant before they got to the compound. Once he arrived, he saw that Hinata had thankfully landed on grass and was seemingly on the other hand had blood leaking from his side and multiple cuts everywhere. Well brat, it's just you and me. The ninja started throwing shurikens and kunais but Naruto was in a tight spot. If he dodged them they could hit Hinata, so he tried his luck with blocking them. Too bad for him, luck was not on his side. He got hit in the arms and stomach with multiple shurikens. I won't let you hurt Hinata. Naruto yelled as he released as much chakra as he could. He made 2 shadow clones who also started making head seals. Fire style. Fire Phoenix Jutsu. Fire style. Fireball Jutsu. Wind style. Giant Whirlwind Jutsu. All 3 attacks combined to a giant horizontal column of flames being launched towards the Chunin, who didn't have anything he could use to block or lessen the damage. Damn you, kid, were his last words before he was vaporized by the flames. By this point, the Hyuga compound was swarming with activity. 3 squads of Anbu were present, the Hokage had also come in his battle attire, and the entire Hyuga clan were also present along with 2 very stunned off-duty Anbu operatives. Everyone had stopped what they were doing when they saw the combination attack from Naruto. They had seen some of the earlier attacks, but this was right in front of them. What majesty from one so young! An Anbu member with a falcon mask said as his colleagues nodded their heads in agreement. Wow! Sarutobi said as he saw the attack. He looked at the caster who was breathing heavily and looked to be in very rough condition. Yuga and Kakashi simply stared at their brother with pride and wonder as they saw what he could do. They also couldn't help but think to themselves, I can't wait to train him. However, everyone snapped out of their stupor when the caster of the jutsu staggered over towards a now awake Hinata and collapsed next to her. He looked at her and smiled. Are you okay? He asked in a hoarse voice. Naruto-kun, she stuttered out through tears. He saw she was crying and tried to wipe them away but was too weak to move his arm. He simply smiled at her and started to close his eyes. As long as you're okay, that's all that matters. He said finally before completely closing his eyes. But not before Hinata noticed his eyes themselves. One had 1 tome and the other had 2. She was not the only one to notice, and Sarutobi's eyes widened when he saw the boy's eyes. He immediately walked over to him and closed his eyelids. We need a medic here now. He yelled. Suddenly an Anbu with a pig mask immediately appeared next to him. After 20 minutes of work, Naruto was out of the danger zone. He had several broken ribs, a broken arm, broken leg, and was suffering from chakra exhaustion. Sarutobi made the decision to bring him to the hospital, but only Anbu medics could treat him. He also declared that only Kakashi, Yuga, and the Hyuga main branch were allowed to see him beside himself. Once everything was all taken care of for Naruto, he declared that they would pick up everything in the morning. Everyone nodded and the aged Kage returned to his office. Once he arrived, he walked over to the fourth Hokage's portrait and held up a piece of metal. Suddenly, seals appeared and a compartment opened which revealed a letter directed to Sarutobi. He already knew that this letter existed, and now knew one other thing. That boy's life just got a whole lot more troublesome, he sighed to himself as he closed the portrait and returning to his desk. He opened the letter and starting a reading. Dear Hiruzen Sarutobi. Sarutobi sat in his office early the next morning after what he was going to call the Hyuga incident. He had just gotten himself some breakfast and taken a nap. After everything that had happened last night, there were still some things that troubled him right now. One of those things being how the intruder got into the village in the first place. He had to now not only check that the barrier seals made by the late NarutoUzumaki were still intact, but that the barrier squad wasn't asleep on the job last night. He frowned at the thought of having to go check on those poor people. Their job was already hard enough and he probably was going to be making it harder. The next thing on his ever-growing list of problems was the fact that a 4-year-old was responsible for not only finding the intruder, but also fighting said intruder, saving the Harrys of a clan, and getting severely injured in the process. Sarutobi had no clue what happened, and he probably wouldn't be getting that information for a while seeing as the boy was so badly injured from his fight. Speaking of said boy, he now had to figure out what to do with him. He sighed as he glanced down at the letter that was still in his hand and groaned to himself. Flashback. Sarutobi looked at the letter in his hands as he closed the fourth Hokage's vault. He had an idea in the letter but definitely wasn't prepared to read its contents. Financially he sighed and started opening it. Dear Hiruzen Sarutobi. Howdy, you old monkey. It's me, the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Hope all is well. Though if you're reading this it probably isn't, I'm currently still riding from the high that Kushina and I are having a beautiful baby boy. Only 17 more weeks to go. Anyway, if you're reading this letter it means that something less than desirable has happened to me and Kushina. Wonderful segue I know, but I'm writing this paranoid so here we are. Hiruzen laughed at the total understatement that was just written. He laughed and cackled in his office at 2 a.m. He laughed at all the times Kushina would hit Minato over the head to get him to stop worrying. All the times he would come up with crazy scenarios that would happen over one tiny little thing. All the times Makoto would yell when they were a genin team over Minato's craziness. I guess this one time he was right. The aged Kage sighed as he whipped a tear that was threatening to leak from his eye and get on the paper. Once he composed himself, he continued to read the letter. If you are in fact reading this letter, then something happened. I hope my child is still alive. I'm sure he is. You wouldn't let anything bad happen to him, lower half circle, but something definitely happened with him. So, let's go over some scenarios that I've come up with in case something interesting happened. This piqued Sarutobi's interests. He had been aware of some things that Minato had set up from Naruto in case something had happened, but to think that some of these things had been planned out for this long. He didn't know what to feel. So, he read on. Due to my parents, there is a specific dojutsu that has the likelihood of awakening. It should awake when he's older if it awakens at all, but in case it does happen and he's young, I want you to take him to his godmother, Makoto Uchiha. I already gave her a letter detailing all this, though she did say that I was crazy for thinking so far ahead. If he awakens the Sharingan, take him to her. She'll know what to do. Whatever you do, do not tell the clan or Danzo. The clan won't like that he has it and will start asking questions that you nor I want to answer. I don't like Danzo. Never will. And if he's anything like me or his mother, he's gonna be smart, which will attract his attention. I guess this is what happens when you are the son of two prodigies. This means I want you to keep my son having the Sharingan a secret for as long as possible. Makoto will understand what's going on and will keep it a secret with Fugaku. The only people I trust with this is Hitomi, how other godmother, Kakashi, and Yugao. That's it. Sarutobi's eyes widened at the idea. She's his godmother. I thought that it was just Hitomi and Jiraiya that were his godparents. He thought to himself as he mentally prepared himself for the hell that was going to come from this. I'll need to inform them immediately. I bet you're currently throwing yourself for a loop over that tidbit of information. I still have my secrets, you sneaky old monkey. Yes, Makoto is one of his godparents along with Hitomi Hyuga, Kushina's best friend. I don't even want to tell you the fight we got into picking them. But anyway, should something happen and he gets the Sharingan, just say the following: you didn't finish your S's and you left out 3 commas, and she'll know what's going on. Again, I really hope that this doesn't happen, but we don't always get what we want. On to the next part of the letter. If something happens with the fox when he's born, I have already talked to Kakashi and Kushina has talked to Yugao. He is to stay with them. He is to go with them and only them unless something happens to either of them and you deem that they can't take care of him. They are his adopted siblings and have the right to take care of him. If you want an idea for who to take him in besides those two, Hitomi and Makoto since they are both his godmothers, Tsuki Ichiraku since he's my best friend, Jiraiya, though if I'm dead he's probably off doing Kami knows what with his spy network, the toads on Mount Myoboku, and only if all those options are either indisposed or unavailable, which I will find laughable. Give him to Tsunade. She is the last resort option. If I'm dead that means that most likely Kushina is as well. Tell her that he's alive and is staying with someone higher on the list. We all know that she can't take care of a baby when she's grieving. Whatever you do, do not put him in an orphanage. I have a feeling that just won't go well if he becomes the Jinchuriki of the 9 tails. Also, don't reveal his status to the council if you can avoid it, but at the point you read this, it could be too late. The aged Cage reread that entire paragraph over and over again for what seemed like hours. He looked at every word that was on the page and wept. He had messed up. He had done the one thing that Minato had explicitly asked him not to do. He should have read the letter earlier. He knew it was there, but always figured that it was his will, but no, he had read that the day after the 9 tails attacked. If he had only read this letter, so many things could have been done differently in regards to Naruto. Naruto, I have failed you. I have failed you time and time again. I swear on every bone in my body, every ounce of strength and chakra, every fiber of my being, I will not fail you again. I will not waver in this. The old man yelled as he held the letter in his hand. He sighed and continued to read the letter that could have changed everything. In any case, whether you read this or not, Kakashi and Yugao already know to take him in. So just let them take him and you'll be fine. Kakashi has the Sharingan and can train him need be, but I'd rather it be Makoto. In case he gets his mother's chakra chains, Yugao has a copy of Kushina's scrolls and so does Hitomi. If he gets something crazy, well, he can put his Brian to the test and figure it out. Oh, and if you could, start him on seals early. You never know, you could have a potential seal master on your hands. Well, you old monkey, I'm sure you have plenty of other things to do today. So I hope you have a good day. Sometimes I know that office gets stuffy. Oh, and in case you aren't already, I name you my successor in case I die and don't name a successor, but I'm sure you kindly retook the mantle. Have a good one, and please, tell my son, whatever his name is, that I love him. If he's anything like me, he'll figure out who I am soon enough, but don't tell him in case he doesn't. May the will of fire forever burn bright. Minato Namikaze, 4th Hokage of Konoha. Smiley face. P.S. In case shit does in fact hit the fan and my son is made the Jinchuriki, the fox has agreed to take care of him. Kushina specifically told me not to interfere with her. I haven't made the seal in case it happens, but it most likely will have a key. Do not block her off. She'll make herself known to him when he's like 6, or if something really bad happens to him. Have fun with the fallout of whatever situation you're in which is making you read this letter. Sarutobi at this point was a crying mess. He had to fix this. He had to fix all of it, he just didn't know how to do it. He had to talk to so many people now and tell them about what he read. He knew Yuga and Kakashi were going to murder him. Hitomi and Makoto were also going to be pissed that they weren't informed that Naruto was even alive. He didn't even want to think about what Tsunade would do once she found out that she still had family around. 1. Well, I guess I gotta fix this, he mumbled to himself as he lifted himself off of the floor into his couch. I need some sleep, he mumbled to himself as he looked at the clock in his room. He groaned as he saw it read 3:42 am. I guess a 5-hour nap would be nice, he mumbled to himself before he passed out on the couch. Flashback end. He looked at the letter in his hand and groaned audibly. He now knew to what extent he messed up. He knew he had made some minor mistakes in Naruto's life, but now he knew that he messed up on his successor's requests. He had to fix it, and that's exactly what he planned to do. He looked at himself in the mirror and frowned. He looked like a mess. So he got up and went to get freshened up. He walked to the bathroom to shower, shave, and do his morning routine. After changing into a fresh set of robes, he sat back down and summoned 4 Anbu agents. They landed in front of him and kneeled. Hokage-sama. They shouted in respect for their leader. Goat, I need you to fetch me Kakashi and Yuga. Llama, I need you to fetch Makoto Uchiha and only her. Frog, I need you to fetch me Hitomi Hyuga and only her. Leopard, I want you to be stationed at the hospital. You are to coordinate with whatever Anbu is guarding Naruto Uzumaki's room and make sure that no one enters the room unless they are Hiyashi Hyuga or Hinata Hyuga. I also want someone to get me when he wakes up, he said with authority as he sipped his coffee. Hi, all the operatives said as they vanished from sight, leaving leaves on the floor. Sarutobi sighed to himself. He looked out of his window and saw the busts of the previous cages of the village and frowned. I have failed, and I will not do it again, he said as he looked at all the faces, specifically the 4th's face. After about 20 minutes of waiting, the first of the people he had called was walking into his office. He looked up and saw a visibly tired Kakashi and Yuga walk in and kneel in front of him. Kakashi was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie that was green, while Yuga was wearing leggings and a red long-sleeved t-shirt. What do you require of us, Hokage-sama? Both said, which made the aged man chuckle a little bit. Yuga-kun, Kakashi-kun, rise, you are off duty. I actually need to talk to you, but we are missing a few people, so we must wait. He explained, which made both teens rise and sit in the chairs that were gathered for them. Okay, Hokage-sama, Yuga said as she stifled a yawn. After a few more minutes, Hitomi Hyuga and Makoto Uchiha walked into the room. Hitomi was a beautiful 26-year-old woman with long violet hair down to her mid-back. She, like the rest of her clan, had pale white eyes and wore a warm smile on her face. She was 5'4" and had a very well-endowed figure. She wore a light blue blouse with a long white skirt covered by a gray apron that tried to hide her curves. Makoto was the same age as Hitomi and had black hair that went to her shoulder. She had black eyes and very pale skin like the rest of her clan and was slightly taller than Hitomi, standing at 5'6". She also had a very voluptuous figure, though was more bottom-heavy than her friend and rival. She was wearing black tights and a red dress with a black apron on. Good morning, Hokage-sama, Makoto said as she bowed at her leader. Yes, good morning, Makoto-chan, Hitomi-chan, he said with a smile as he gestured for them to sit down. I hope all of you are doing all right this morning, he said as he tried to relieve the tension in the room. While I'd love to catch up with you, Hokage-sama, Why are we here this early in the morning? Hitomi asked as she folded her hands over her lap. Yes, Hokage-sama, I would also like to ask, especially after last night, Kakashi asked as he looked at the aged man in front of him. Quick to the point, I see, Hitomi. He smiled, but it didn't help the obvious frown that was slowly edging onto her face. He sighed and gestured for the Anbu in the room to leave. Before we start, I would like each of you to use your dojutsu to see that there is no one else in this room besides us. He said, which made the three people in front of him nod their heads. Hitomi, Makoto, and Kakashi revealed their eyes and looked around the room to make sure it was secure. They all nodded their heads to signify that there wasn't anyone else in the room. Once that occurred, Sarutobi started going through hand and whispered, "Impenetrable silence barrier jutsu." The occupants of the room's eyes widened when they realized what he was doing. Yuga looked at Sarutobi and raised an eyebrow. Hokage-sama, what's going on? She asked, much to the appreciation of the other three people. Hiruzen sighed as he pulled out the letter from Minato. He handed them the 4 copies he had made to the people sitting in front of him and mentally prepared himself for what was about to happen. As you may know, last night the Hyuga compound was infiltrated by a rogue ninja. We don't know where he came from or what rank he was. The only 2 people to see him are Hinata Hyuga, who hasn't been questioned yet per the request of Hiashi Hyuga, and NarutoUzumaki, who is currently unconscious and in a coma due to chakra exhaustion and sustaining many life-threatening injuries. He looked at the room and took in the reactions. Kakashi and Yugao had already known this since they saw him enter the hospital. Hitomi was less surprised than Makoto. She was there last night when she heard all the commotion. She had seen Naruto fighting the man and save her daughter. Makoto was totally surprised at what happened. The Uchiha compound was on the other side of the village, so she hadn't heard or seen anything happen. Is he okay? The Uchiha matron asked urgently to the man who nodded his head. He suffered from very bad chakra exhaustion, multiple cases of internal bleeding, 3 broken ribs, a concussion, a punctured lung, and lightning and fire burns, Sarutobi explained. Do we yet know who did this? She continued to ask and was angered by the response she got from the old man. Unfortunately, we do not know who was responsible for the attack and kidnapping. And we never will know because Naruto incinerated him with a combination jutsu that most Chunin couldn't pump out. Let alone a 4-year-old at the end of a fight with severe injuries, all while trying to protect someone. Wait, what? Makoto asked, which made Hitomi smirk slightly. It took 15 minutes to get Makoto up to speed on what happened last night, and she was impressed with the child. Okay, that's all well and good, but that still doesn't explain why we are here, Makoto said, which made the 3 other people nod in agreement. Right, he pointed to the paper that was in front of each person and sighed before he steeled himself. What you are about to read is a SSS ranked secret. What you are about to read and discuss is confidential, you can't repeat it to anyone. If you do, you and the person you revealed it to will be murdered. The only person you can talk to about any of this is Naruto once he is made aware of this, or he figures it out himself. Clear. He said with ice in his voice, which made everyone in the room shiver. Hi Hokage-sama. They all said, which made the man smirk. Still got it, he thought to himself as he mentally patted himself on the back. Good. You may now flip over the paper and begin to read. He then looked around the room at all the possible exits. His eyes widened when he realized he couldn't leave the barrier that he casted and started to sweat. He knew that he was going to be, in a sense, when they finished reading that letter. He knew he was going to get a verbal shellacking of the likes that the world has never seen. He had to pray to Kami that they wouldn't kill him in the end. Suddenly he felt the temperature of the room drop to sub-zero temperatures. Sarutobi looked up and saw the fires of hell raging in the eyes of Yugao, Hitomi, and Makoto. Kakashi just looked mad. He was alive. Hitomi screamed at the man in front of her. This entire time he has been alive and you didn't tell anyone. That's not totally true, Yugao and Kaka. Oh, cut the shit, old man. Yugao yelled at her leader. The only reason we even know was because we were there when Minato-sensei flashed into the compound carrying Kushina-sensei and Naruto. I bet if it was up to you we wouldn't know at all. Screamed a now crying Yugao. You have to understand, he pleaded. Understand what? Everyone looked to see Kakashi with his Sharingan rapidly spinning. He was now standing and was releasing so much ki it wasn't funny. What do we need to understand? These are specific instructions from Minato-sensei said for us to take care of him from day one. You refused to do it. You took that away from Yugao and me. Even after we told you repeatedly that they asked us to take care of him in case something like this happened. And all along it was written down. Kakashi raged as he directed all his ki at Sarutobi, who now suddenly looked his age. I think we are forgetting the fact that you lied to us that he even was alive in the first place. Hitomi screamed. The only reason I found out was because he was playing with Hinata in the park and said Kushina's verbal tick a few times. If I hadn't been there I wouldn't have known it was him. I haven't even met him yet. Makoto yelled as she cried. I didn't know it was him. All the beatings I saw, all the times I saw him on the street. I didn't look at him lest my of a husband yell and scream at me for doing something to help. I could have raised him. Given him the love of a mother. And yet you lied to me and pretty much all the clan heads. Do you want to know what Shikaku and Shibi are going to do when they figure it out? Does his grandmother even know he's alive? The Uchiha matron cried as she looked down at the letter and finished reading it. Her eyes immediately widened when she saw the part about her in it. I see you've read that little detail as well, here's inside as he rubbed his face. Makoto, you didn't finish your S's and you left out 3 commas. He said as he watched the room grow silent. It was interrupted with sobs from Makoto. He awakened it. She sobbed quietly and asked. The old man nodded his head. She then continued speaking in a quiet, bewildered voice. He's the youngest one in the entire history of the clan. The only one to come close is Madara and he did it at 9. That's unheard of. It's not correct, Sarutobi said with a frown. Madara awakened it at 9 and that's true, but Minato awakened his at 7. This made Makoto's eyes narrow. How do you know this and I don't? She asked with anger in her voice. She was the clan historian for awakened dates and ages, so she knew all of this information. She didn't care that Minato had the eye. Hell, she already knew he had it. She didn't however know when he got them. Because I swore him to secrecy about it. Along with who his parents were. Sarutobi said, which made the eyes of everyone widen. Wait, I know his mother but not his father, Makoto said with a smile. Her name was Jasmine Namikaze and she apparently died when he was 7. Her eyes widened as she realized why he awakened them. She then looked at his face out the window and said a silent prayer. So we're just going to glance over the fact that Naruto awakened the Sharingan at the age of 4. Yugao yelled as she got the conversation back on topic. Yes, the only 2 people who saw it were Hinata and myself, Sarutobi said, which made Makoto look at ease. Is that a good thing? I would think that you Uchihas would want to flaunt that he did it so young. Hitomi said as she glared at Makoto. Kami, yes, this is a good thing. Do you know what would happen? My of a husband would basically demand him be put into the Uchihas to be trained as a lifeless, emotionless, puppet. He's doing the same thing with Itachi and he hasn't even awakened his yet. It's a good thing I'm here. Now I can do what Minato-kun told me to do. He left for me to train him in the eyes because he was the only one he trusted other than himself. Makoto explained, which got nods from everyone else. How many tomes does he have, or did you not see them? She asked. I think I saw 1 in the right eye and 2 in the left. You will have to ask when he wakes up. Speaking of which, he needs to be trained. Sarutobi said, which made all their eyes widen. Why does he need to be trained? He beat a rogue nin. I think he's pretty good for a 4-year-old. Hitomi asked the aged leader. Because I have a feeling that that will not be the last Rouge nin that goes after Hinata himself. He is currently living with Kakashi and Yuga, which is true, but they are frequently out on missions. Sarutobi said, which made Yuga and Kakashi frown. The Hyuga clan can watch him. Hitomi said with a smile. I'm sure he'd love to stay with Hinata. She said sweetly. I can also come to your apartment and take him to a training ground to train him, Makoto suggested, much to Hitomi's ire. Minato Sensei and Kushina Sensei wanted all 4 of us to watch him in case they died, Kakashi said, which got the attention of all 4 people in the room. They all looked at the teen to continue. Why don't we all watch him? He lives with Yuga and me, but we are frequently busy, as you said. He can train with Hinata on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Then he trains with Makoto-sama Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Then on Sundays we give him a break, or in case the fox wants to train him it can do it then, or he can relax and be a normal kid. Kakashi said as he looked at Sarutobi, who smiled at the idea. I agree with Kakashi-kun. I think that this allows everyone to have time with him. But Makoto, what are you going to do to get away from Sasuke and the clan? He asked. Sasuke is usually not with me anymore. He always wants to go with the other kids and only comes home for dinner. So I'm usually alone most days. She said with a frown on her face. She knew that she wasn't as close to Sasuke as she was with Itachi due to their father. While she still loved both her children, she longed to have someone she could be a mother to. I'll agree with this, but I must ask Hiyashi, who I'm sure won't have a problem with this, Hitomi said as she looked at Sarutobi, who nodded his head. Okay, so that's now all taken care of. And for what it's worth, he paused and sighed outwardly. I really messed up. I should have read that letter way earlier than I did, and I kept you all in the dark about Naruto. I'm truly sorry about that, he said solemnly to the people in front of him. I think I speak for all of us when I say that while we are angry at you, you tried to keep him safe. The past happened, and we now have an opportunity to be in his life. We need to use this opportunity to the fullest. Kakashi said, which got nods from everyone in the room. Thank you all. Sarutobi said with a smile on his face as he stood up and bowed. But do remember that everything said here is an SSS-ranked secret with the exception of the arrangement to spend time with Naruto, Sarutobi said as he released the barrier so that they could exit the room. Hi Hokage-sama, they said as they shushined back to their homes to go about the rest of their days. Sarutobi then called back the rest of his Anbu so that he too could tackle everything that needed to be done today. He heard his door open and his secretary walked into his office. Here's today's load, Hokage-sama, she said sweetly as she placed a large pile of scrolls and loose documents on top of his desk. He groaned as he quickly grabbed the letters before they got mixed in with the pile of papers. He burned them and placed the original back in the 4th vault and returned to his worst nightmare, the bane of all evil, paperwork. Deep room under Konoha. Report. Sir, the Kumo Chunin failed to capture the Hyuga princess. The figure looked at the kneeling man in front of him and frowned. Oh, and why is that? He asked in an emotionless voice. NarutoUzumaki was there to stop and kill the ninja. The kneeled masked man said as he handed the man in front of him a report. The man read it with a frown. Fine, leave me, the man said. The masked figure complied and vanished from sight. The man then walked over to a desk and looked at a piece of paper on it. They were the orders that he had given the Cloud Ninja. He read them over and smirked when he saw the small D on the corner of the paper. He then placed the paper in a box and locked it. NarutoUzumaki, he said as he looked at a small blank mask sitting on his desk. You intrigue me, he finished with a smirk as he vanished from his office. Akari was pacing back and forth in the living room of the house that she had created in Naruto's mindscape. It was a nice 3-story house with an open concept main floor that leads into a furnished living room. There were 2 dark blue couches and a loveseat covered in light green pillows and blankets. A black coffee table with coasters on it. There was a large television that was used by Akari to watch the outside. While she could see the outside due to being linked with Naruto's senses, she found it much better to sit on her very comfortable couch and watch the outside on her television while she could read or practice her calligraphy. She was already connected to the boy's other senses but didn't really pay attention to them. The only ones she really paid attention to were his vision, sometimes his hearing, and his chakra sensing. Around the room, there were pictures that Akari made for herself since Naruto was rarely ever inside of the seal. She had pictures of herself with her other 8 siblings. She had a picture of her and NarutoUzumaki, her first container who she actually befriended after 20 years. She had a few pictures of her and her 3 younger siblings Matabi, 1, Chome, 2, and Namakuji, 3. She had a few photos of Minato and Kushina, some with just Kushina. Akari had been pacing the room when she saw a picture that made her stop. She was looking at a picture of the first time she had met her best friend, companion, and lover. It was a picture of herself in her human form and Kami sitting behind a waterfall. She smiled at the photo and started to look back on her relationship with the goddess in her life as a whole. Kami and Akari had been friends for millennia. They had been talking to each other since Akari had been wandering in the forests of what is now known as Fire Country. She actually met Kami when she was taking a break from watching over the known universe. Akari had been watching fish in the lake when the goddess walked over and sat. The two started talking and became fast friends. After a few centuries of talking, the two decided to become more than friends. Kami would occasionally come down to Earth to catch up with Akari and have fun together. A few times Akari had asked her if she could actually propose and ask Kami for her hand in marriage, but was turned down by the goddess herself saying, "Such things like marriage are trivial when you're already soul-bound." So Akari and Kami continued their relationship for many centuries until the founding of the Leaf Village. When the village was founded, Akari found herself needing to be in her fox form much more. She knew that her siblings were starting to be captured and sealed into humans, so being the most powerful of her siblings, she knew that she couldn't get captured. All that changed when Madara Uchiha decided that it would be a good idea to summon her in a fight with Hashirama Senju. She didn't want to fight and tried to run away, but Madara was able to control her with his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. This allowed him to use her in his fight and eventual defeat at the hand of Hashirama. Once Hashirama was able to cut down Madara, NarutoUzumaki, who was the wife of Hashirama, was able to seal her away inside of her stomach. That was when Kami made her first appearance to Akari in at least 70 years. She apologized to her lover and begged for her forgiveness, which the fox spirit gave her. They then proceed to smash in the head of NarutoUzumaki. Kami then made a point to see Akari at least once a month, if not more, from that point onwards. Mito had been meditating when she stumbled upon the duo talking in the black void of her mindscape. She at first was very confused about what was happening, but after a few conversations with Akari, they became good friends. Over the next 20 or so years, Mito and Akari had become the best of friends. It had gotten to the point where Mito found solace in her when her husband Hashirama was assassinated. The two had daily conversations, and when the time came for Akari to be transferred to Mito's granddaughter, Kushina. When the transfer was about to start, an old Mito entered the seal and gave Akari one last hug, and said her goodbyes. When Akari got transferred to Kushina, she was able to help guide the girl down the path she desired. Kushina became best friends with the fox and was quite happy for the companionship. Akari and Kushina were such good friends, that when Kushina got pregnant, Akari promised to help protect and guide her son. Then something happened. Akari had been focusing on not breaking through the seal as Kushina was giving birth when she felt something pull her from the seal. She then realized that someone had pulled her free from the seal. She didn't know anyone with that kind of power but knew that they had to be strong. Akari tried to break free from the man who had summoned her, but it was too late as he had already trapped her in a very powerful genjutsu from his Sharingan. She was forced to go on a rampage throughout the Leaf Village. She had been rampaging through the village when she felt the illusion she was under be lifted. Still confused, Akari continued to destroy things. It wasn't until she realized that she was about to be sealed away. She looked at Kushina, who was in tears, and mouthed to her an apology. She witnessed her previous container nod her head and send her a kiss goodbye. Akari then found herself back in a dark void. She didn't have any idea of where she was but could assume that she was inside of Naruto, Kushina, and Minato's child. After a year, the seal began to take the shape of a sewer, which confused her greatly. Mito's seal was a cave, Kushina's was a gray void. She didn't understand what was happening until she heard a small baby cry. Confused, she looked and saw a small blonde baby. The baby was red and had small bruise marks all over his body. She couldn't touch the boy, so she tried to send some chakra to help soothe him. This went on for 3 years. Naruto would randomly appear in the sewer broken and battered. She would heal him and try to understand what it was that was causing her container to be treated like this. It was after the 30th meeting that she realized it was the villagers. Shortly after this realization, Kami appeared to her. She explained to the goddess and explained to her what was happening. To say that Akari was angry was an understatement. It took long hours of fornication to finally calm down the fox spirit. Kami promised her that it would get better, but didn't believe her. It was a few weeks later that Naruto appeared in the Seal Awaken alert. After that happened, she could definitely say that her mood and disposition had improved greatly. I never imagined that when I was created that this would be my life. She thought to herself as she smiled softly at the picture on the wall. What are you thinking about? Akari jumped up in the air and turned around to see her lover smiling at her. She was wearing her usual robe and had her white hair in a bun. Kami looked at her with a slight smirk on her face. I knew I would spook you, but I didn't think I would get you that much. She said as she walked over to Akari and kissed her on the lips. Akari melted into the kiss and wrapped her arms around Kami's waist. She hugged the goddess and felt all of her tension in her body melt away. Kami-sama, it's good to see you, she said as she smiled at the blue-haired beauty in front of her. Kami smiled at her and released the hug. She led her lover to one of the couches and sat down on one of the couches. It's good to see you too, Kari-chan, but you still never answered my question, Kami said as she looked at Akari with concern. Akari sighed and rubbed the bridge of her nose. She looked at the TV that was still blank and frowned. Kami noticed this and stared at her. She then realized what the TV was for and looked at Akari. He hasn't woken up yet, has he? Kami asked. No, it's been 2 days and he hasn't gotten up. I knew I should have taught him more chakra control so that he wouldn't blow it all after what Tenjutsu. She said with her hands in her hands. She felt arms wrap around her and pull her close. It's okay, Kari-chan. You taught him well. He was able to keep his other half safe. He actually did amazingly. Kami explained to her lover as she pulled her onto her lap. I know, but I just can't help but feel responsible. I'm his mother figure. The fox spirit cried out as she leaned on Kami. Yeah, and you won't be the only one, Kami mumbled to herself. She looked at the woman in her arms and sighed. I know what can make you feel better, she said with a smirk on her face. Especially since he's not here right now, this part was whispered into the woman's ear. She felt a shiver run down Akari's spine and she smirked even wider. What if he wakes up in the middle of it? Akari asked as she turned to face Kami. I didn't think you were one to shy away from an audience, Kami said as she ran her hands down Akari's back. She noticed that the shirt Akari was wearing was very thin and smirked when she felt her lover's nipples harden. There was an awkward silence that hung in the air as the words of a small child were being processed by both deities. It wasn't until Akari heard the sniffles of Naruto did she realize what was going on. She immediately separated from Kami, who was too stunned to move. She then ran over to Naruto and hugged him. Ka-chan I heard screaming A and I. Naruto cried into his mother as she tried to calm the poor now traumatized boy in her arms. She shushed him and tried to rub his back. Well, Akari tried to explain what was happening to Naruto but couldn't think of anything to say to the child. She looked over at Kami, who had just replaced her robe, and walked over to Akari. She snapped her finger and Akari was wearing what she was originally wearing. Ka-chan, why were you yelling? Naruto asked from his mother's chest as she continued to soothe the child. Your mother and I were playing a game, Kami said as she knelt down by the pair and smiled at Naruto, who raised his head from his mother's chest. Who are you? He asked as he looked at the being with fear in his eyes. Why you were making Ka-chan yell? I am an old friend of your mother's, Naruto, Kami explained as she smiled at the child. I'm sorry if we scared you. That's okay, just don't do it again please, Naruto stammered as he released his mother from her hug. When Naruto let go of Akari, she felt like something was being pulled from her back. She didn't think about it as she looked at Naruto, who was starting to come back to normal. I need to get him so that he never talks about that to anyone. I guess bribery works. Sweetie, Ka-chan doesn't want you to say anything about what you saw to anyone, so what can I do to get it so that you won't say anything? She asked Naruto, who scrunched up his face trying to think of something he wanted. It can be anything, he asked his mom, who nodded her head. Do you remember the first time I came here? Akari nodded her head and gestured for him to continue but didn't notice the growing smirk on Kami's face. Well, I want to drink whatever that was again, Naruto said finally, which made Akari's face go pale and Kami to start cackling. Naruto, that was a one-time thing, Akari said as she covered her chest protectively. I don't know about that, Kari-chan, Kami said with a smirk as she snapped her fingers. Akari frowned as she went to check her nipple and sure enough a trickle of milk came out. She groaned as she looked Naruto dead in the eyes. Is this really what you want? The boy nodded, which made Akari sigh. Okay, close your eyes, I'm going to put you to sleep. This should also help you recover. So when you wake up you won't be in here anymore, she said as she watched Naruto close his eyes. She then waved her hand in front of his face and caught him as he collapsed. She then proceeded to lift up her shirt and remove one of her noticeably larger and placed it into Naruto's mouth. Instinctively she felt as he started to suck and drink from her nipple. You know, you didn't have to make them larger, Kami-sama, Akari said as she looked at her smirking lover. I'll never understand how you can go back to calling me Sama after we. Kami said as she cleaned up the mess on the couch. Neither can I. Both Akari and Kami turned towards the new voice that was inside of the house. She had long deep red hair that was currently tied in two buns on either side of her head. She had cream-colored skin with a small purple diamond at the center of her forehead. Standing at 5'7", the woman had a fierce look in her pupilless eyes. She looked young, but both Akari and Kami knew better than to assume this woman's age. She was wearing a long white robe that did nothing to hide her prodigious cup chest. The woman smiled at both deities and walked over to the still feeding child and rubbed his cheek. Mito-chan, Akari whispered as she looked at the woman standing in front of her. Is it really that hard to believe that I sealed my chakra and knowledge onto you? Mito asked as she smirked at Akari. Though I must say, I didn't expect to come back to see you feeding my great-grandchild? She asked without looking up from the child. You did what? Akari asked in disbelief as she looked at the legendary Uzumaki who was standing in front of her. When I was about to die, I sealed myself onto a seal on your back. It would only be activated by one of my descendants that was in need. Once activated, I would appear in the seal and help them with you. She explained and got a nod from Kami and Akari. So the pulling I felt was you being released from my back. Akari asked and got a nod from Mito. Yes, that was in fact me, she said as she examined the still sleeping child. Though I don't know why it would have activated. He looks healthy and happy. Akari and Kami then spent the next hour explaining Naruto's life in detail. They explained everything that had happened to him, and by the end, Mito nodded her head and smiled. Well, Akari-chan, you just got a new roommate, she said with a smile as she hugged the orange-haired girl. Both of them proceed to hug Kami as she left the mindscape to continue her job as the goddess of creation. Akari then noticed that the TV screen was starting to turn on, meaning that Naruto was starting to wake up on the outside. She gestured for Mito to sit down and watch the TV. So this is what you do all day? Mito asked as she looked at the TV. Yeah, it's actually quite entertaining. Naruto's hospital room. Naruto didn't open his eyes when he first realized that he was awake. Instead, he tried to sense the people that were around him. He sensed that there were 8 chakra signatures around him. He recognized 3 of them but didn't recognize the other 5 that were around the room. He then started listening to the conversation that was happening around him. Mean IG get to BBAN ninja. A little girl who he immediately recognized was his new best friend Hinata. That's right. You get to be a ninja just like me and your dad and your clan. An older voice who he recognized as Hinata's mom said. Who knows, maybe Naruto wants to be a ninja too. It was then that Naruto decided to make his presence known. He decided to open his eyes but immediately regretted it. He closed his eyes and groaned as he tried to sit up. Everyone in the room immediately went silent as they looked towards the hospital bed where Naruto was laying. He felt someone move towards him but couldn't quite understand how he could. Naruto-kun. Hinata immediately ran to his bedside and cried into his side. He tried to sit up and comfort her but found that he was extremely sore. He opened his eyes again and found that they were adjusted to the light and that he was able to see much clearer and in much more detail. 5. Hinata-chan, you're okay? He asked his friend, who nodded her head. He gave her his trademark foxy grin which made her blush. Good. I'm glad. He looked up and saw that Hinata's mom was talking to a woman with black hair and that his Gigi was reading a book. He observed the unidentified woman but then shrugged his shoulder thinking that she was probably not a threat. It's good to see that you are awake, Naruto-kun, the elderly Hokage said with a smile. Thanks, Gigi. How long have I been out? The blonde asked the man, who frowned slightly. Sweetie, you've been unconscious for 5 days. The unidentified woman said with relief as she observed the boy's features. Specifically his now slitted pupils in his blue eyes. Wow, that's a long time, Naruto said in wonder as he looked around the room. His eyes finally landing on the black-haired woman. Hey, Gigi, who is she? He asked as he pointed to her. All your questions will be answered in due time, Naruto, the man said as he stood up and started walking towards the window in the hospital room. But first, he looked back at the boy with a smile on his face. I need you to tell me what happened 5 nights ago at the Hyuga compound. Naruto sat in his hospital bed looking at the Hokage, who was now staring at Naruto in the eyes. He had just been asked to recall everything that had happened. He sat there quietly for a few minutes before he started talking. Well, I woke up really early in the morning. I felt that something wasn't right and I felt alarm bells ringing. I tried to sense what was going on, and that was when I felt Hinata-chan's chakra moving. He explained to the aged man. Wait, the Hyuga matriarch said as she looked at Naruto. Yuga and Kakashi's apartment is a sold 5 miles away from the Hyuga compound. How did you know it was even her? Hitomi asked. Well, I remembered her chakra. Naruto explained as he looked at Hitomi. I can do it right now if you don't believe me. Alright, I want everyone in the room to move around and I want Naruto to close his eyes, Sarutobi said as he got up to walk to a corner of the room. After 2 minutes, he had Naruto point to everyone in the room. Hinata-chan is right there. He pointed to Hinata blushed when she said his name so affectionately. Hinata's Ka-chan is right there. He pointed to Hitomi. Weird mystery lady is right there. He pointed to Makoto whose sweat dropped at the nickname. Gigi is right there. He pointed to Sarutobi who smiled warmly. And weird mask guy is right there. He pointed to the ceiling. Everyone in the room froze when a masked Anbu with a blank mask materialized in a position to kill Naruto but was stopped by Sarutobi. The Hokage drew a kunai and threw it. The knife landed in the root member's skull. Luckily, Hinata had her eyes covered by her mother when the mystery figure appeared and Makoto was getting in the stance for a sealess fire justice. Sarutobi looked at Naruto and was shocked to see that he looked perfectly normal. Sorry about that, we have to take out the trash, he said as he signaled for 2 actual Anbu members to come to take away the body. It's okay Gigi. Naruto smiled at the man who just killed someone in front of him. Naru-kun, aren't you a little scared about what you just saw? Makoto asked the child who shook his head. Nah. When you've seen a giant tiger rip the head off of 3 small baby boars because of land disputes, you learn to live with death and blood, Naruto explained, which surprisingly got a nod from Hiruzen. I understand Naruto, though it is a little worrying that you're so used to seeing killings and blood for someone your age. I understand Gigi, Naruto replied, albeit a little quieter. Anyway, when I sensed that Hinata-chan was in danger I quietly grabbed Nei-chan's pouches and ran to Hinata. After I got there I stopped the guy who then threw stuff at me. Where did you learn how to dodge Naru-kun? Sarutobi asked after he silently put up a silencing barrier. Well, some of the monkeys and foxes in the forest would throw stuff at me for fun. If I dodged them I got fruit, if I didn't, well they would dunk me in the lake. Naruto said as he shivered thinking about all the times he got dunked in the lake. How did you get them to do this? Makoto asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, I talked to them. Naruto replied like it was the simplest thing in the world. You talked to them? Hitomi asked with just as much skepticism as Makoto had. Naru-kun, you can tell them about your mother, Sarutobi said, which made Naruto's head turn dangerously towards the old man. How do you know about her? Naruto asked the man. Meanwhile, inside Naruto's head, Akari would also like to know how the old man knew she was talking to him. Must have been Kakashi and Yuga. She figured as she continued to watch how the scene would play out. Your siblings told me about her, he said with a kind smile. Alright, well, I have a giant fox that lives in my tummy. Naruto blurted out, which made Makoto and Hitomi's eyes widen in fear. So you know about the fox? Hitomi asked Naruto, who shook his head in an affirmative manner. Yeah, she's really nice and talks to me all the time. Except for right now. What do you mean, Naru-kun? I'm just listening to what's going on, she said with a smile on her face as she poked Mito to say something. Yes, it is quite interesting to hear this conversation, Guppy, the elder Uzumaki said with a smile. On the outside, Naruto's face scrunched up in confusion as he heard the new voice in his head. Who are you? He asked the new voice in his head, and who laughed in return. Who, me? Well, I am your distant relative, she said as she didn't want to give away her relationship to the boy until he figured out who his parents were. Naruto-kun, everything okay? Sarutobi asked the boy, who nodded his head. Oh yeah, everything is fine. Ka-chan was just talking to me about something, Naruto explained to the man who nodded his head. Wait, you have a giant fox in your head? Hinata asked, which made all the adults' eyes widen. Yeah, well, I think she said that she's actually in a seal on my tummy, Naruto explained as he lifted up his shirt to show Hinata the seal. She walked over and poked it, which made Naruto giggle. Wait, if there's a giant fox in there, how does it fit? Hinata asked, which made all the adults sweat drop. I don't know, Naruto replied with a shrug of his shoulders. So you don't dislike Naruto because he has a giant fox in his tummy? Sarutobi hesitantly asked the small child, who shook her head. Naruto-kun is my first friend, she said happily. I'm not giving that up because he has a fox Ka-chan that lives in his tummy and talks in his head. Hinata said with a smile on her face, which made everyone else smile as well. Naruto's seal. Mito looked over at Akari, who was whipping a tear from her eye. She smiled at the sight and leaned over to hug her. That was really special, wasn't it, Akari-chan? Yeah, she said as she sniffles a little. It really was. Is she? Mito looked at Akari, who nodded her head. She's his other half. He can't tell, but her chakrak is synced in perfect harmony with his. She explained to the Uzumaki, who smiled. Just like me and Hashi-kun, she whispered. Yeah, Kami said as she thought about a certain white-haired supreme goddess. Naruto's hospital room. All the adults looked at Hinata with wide smiles that were full of pride. Hitomi grabbed her daughter and hugged her tightly. Makoto looked at Naruto, who was a little jealous of the affection, and went to give him a hug as well. After a few minutes of hugging, Naruto continued with his story of how the night offered. He talked about how he talked to the ninja and how they both launched attacks at the other. Wait, how many jutsu do you know? Makoto asked the boy, who sheepishly scratched the back of his head. He then went on to explain all the jutsu that he knew, which brought wide eyes to both Makoto and Hitomi. Sarutobi already knew all this information, so he didn't show any reaction. After that small setback, Naruto continued with his fight with the Kumo Chunin. He explained how he walked on the walls to avoid getting hit by lightning, how he set up an earth wall so that he could get Hinata out of the bag, and finally how he used shadow clones so that he could make a combination attack with his wind and 2 fire jutsu. Thank you, Naru-kun, that makes all of this a lot easier for me to deal with, Sarutobi said with a smile on his face. Now can you answer my questions? Naruto asked the man, who nodded his head. Cool. Who is she? He points to Makoto, who smiles brightly. Naru-chan, my name is Makoto Uchiha. I will be training you for the time being when you aren't with the Hyugas or your siblings, she said warmly as she wrapped Naruto into another hug. His head was right where he wanted it to be, right in the middle of the Uchiha's chest. After a few moments of pure bliss for the boy, Makoto let him go and went to sit down in her chair. She then smiled at him and went to ask him some questions of her own. Now, Naru-chan, have you noticed anything different with your eyes recently? She asked the boy, who nodded his head. Hi, I can see in the dark, and I can see really clearly, and I can see really far too, he explained, which made Hitomi curious. Hokage same, could this be a byproduct of Naruto being a Jinchuriki? She tried to ask the man quietly, but Naruto still heard it. Gigi, what's a Jinchuriki? The boy asked, which made everyone in the room sweat drop. You mean a Jinchuriki, Naruto? The literal definition of the word means human sacrifice, but really what it means is that you house what is a tailed beast, which are better known as demons. You house the 9-tailed demon fox, which is known to be the strongest of the 9-tailed beasts. Sarutobi explained. Naruto, I want you to know that what the old man is true, but also that we aren't demons, we are spirits and are greatly misunderstood, Akari said in a soft voice in his mind. I know, Ka-chan, you're a nice person, and I'm gonna make people change their minds about you. Hinata-chan doesn't mind you. You'll see, I'm gonna do it, I promise, and I've never broken a promise yet. Naruto thought in his head, which made Akari smile brightly. Thank you, Naruto. Naruto smiled as he felt his mother's warmth spread through his body. He hugged his body and nuzzled his head into his chest. Naruto, are you okay? Sarutobi asked cautiously. He didn't know how the child would react to being told this information. What? Oh, I'm perfectly fine, he said with a smile on his face. What about you, Hinata? Hitomi asked the girl who shrugged her shoulders. Naruto-kun saved me from meanings, he's not a demon. And I don't think his Ka-chan is one either. People are just mean. Hinata said, which once again made everyone smile. Alright, well, back to the topic we were originally talking about. Naruto-kun, your eyes, did you notice anything different about them? Makoto asked the child, who shook his head with a frown on his face. No, I mean things got slower and turned black and white, but other than that nothing, Naruto explained, which made Makoto smile. That's exactly what I was looking for. Do you think you could try to make the same thing happen again? She asked the child, which made him shrug his shoulders. That's okay, I'm gonna help you, all you have to do is channel chakra into your eyes. Okay, sounds pretty easy. Naruto did as he was told and found that his vision became slightly slower, but this time he could see in full color, though now he could see that there were small balls of fire in everyone's stomachs. Wow, this is really cool. Everyone looked at Naruto's Sharingan and noticed that it was 1 tome in his right eye and 2 in his left. Makoto and Hinata were in awe of the boy's eyes, and Sarutobi smiled fondly. Wow, Ka-chan, can I do that? Hinata asked her mother, who smiled but shook her head. I'm sorry, sweetie, but even if you tried, I don't think it would work. You only unlocked your chakra yesterday. Hitomi said to her daughter, who looked down in disappointment. You have to let her at least try, Naruto said as he looked at how much chakra Hinata had. She actually had a lot for her age. She had about 2/3 what Naruto had. Alright, I guess we can try, Hitomi sighed as she sat down in front of her daughter. All you have to do is 6 hand signs. They are rat, dog, lightning, rat, and ram. She said as she demonstrated them. After that, all you have to do is channel chakra to your eyes and say, Byakugan. You are very young, Hinata, and even prodigies don't unlock these eyes at the age of 4 inches, she explained. Hinata looked at her mother and then at Naruto. She saw him smile at her and hold his thumb up. You can do it, Hinata-chan. He yelled as he smiled at her. I believe in you. I can do this. Naruto-kun believes in me. I can't let him down. She thought to herself as she slowly did the hand signs. Once she finished the hand signs, she took a deep breath and shouted at the top of her lungs, Byakugan. 1. Suddenly veins started protruding on her face and her eyes looked slightly different. Hinata looked around and noticed that she could see almost 360 degrees. She smiled to herself as she almost fell down due to exhaustion. I did it, she said as she leaned on Naruto's bed for support. Yeah, Naruto said as he looked at her and smiled. You did great. Hitomi was speechless. Never before in the history of her entire clan had she heard of someone unlocking the Byakugan before at the age of 4. Not only that, but she could do it on her first try. She didn't know what to do. If she told Hiyashi, she would be starting training immediately and wouldn't be able to have a normal childhood. Sarutobi was equally amazed. He has been alive for a long time. He was 71 years old and had seen a lot. Never would he have ever imagined that he would be in the same room as someone who unlocked the Sharingan, but also the Byakugan. Both of them being children and both of them not even in the academy. Well, we definitely have some talented children in our midst. He thought to himself as he glanced at Makoto, who looked like she was about to faint. Well, that was unexpected, the aged man finally said with a chuckle. This could be huge for the village. Both parents looked at the man like he was insane. Makoto instantly moved to Naruto's side and placed his head close to her chest. Hitomo immediately put Hinata behind her and glared at the man. And what do you mean by that? Makoto asked through a clenched jaw. Well, what I mean is that we have 2 very young and very powerful ninjas in our midst. He said cryptically. Cut the shit, what do you really mean? Hitomi asked as she then activated her Byakugan. Makoto wasn't too far behind as she also activated her Sharingan. Sarutobi sighed and sat back down in his chair. He rubbed his face into his palms and groaned. The village is being seen as weak throughout the elemental nations. Okay, but what does that have anything to do with Naruto and Hinata? Makoto asked as she pulled a stool over to Naruto's bedside as he was very content with staying in her bosom. Alright, Iwa and Kumo are getting antsy. We just lost the Yondaime, Red Death 2, a quarter of our Anbu and Elite Junin, and we haven't had any of our genin reach the final rounds of the past 5 Chunin exams. He said in a grave tone. Like I said, what does that have anything to do with these children? Makoto asked again, her Sharingan spinning dangerously fast. We need to look strong, we need to avoid another war. If we got into another war, he purposely trailed off his thoughts so that the two mothers could understand what he was saying. You're saying that you want them to become shinobi so that you can increase the village's standing? Hitomi asked the man who nodded his head slowly. Are you out of your kami-forsaken mind? Makoto yelled, which made everyone wince a little. Hey, if you want to take this damn hat from me, then by all means. Sarutobi fired back at the Uchiha, who shut her mouth but still glared at him. We don't have any other choice. We can't go to war or else we will all die. I can't let that happen. Those two could very well be our only hopes. He yelled as he rubbed his temples with his index fingers. All fight. Everyone in the room looked at Naruto like he had 5 heads. He had turned off his Sharingan to conserve energy and was now looking at the 3 adults with a serious expression on his face. Naru-chan, I don't think you know what we're talking about, Hitomi said in as calm a voice she could muster at the moment. Alright, let's see if I understand. These other villages think that our village is weak. Kind of like a group of foxes without a mother, the other villages being coyotes or wolves. The wolves think that the foxes are weak and so they are going to kill them. But if strong fox babies appear, it will make the wolves and coyotes think that the rest of the foxes, kits are strong so they will get scared and leave. Is that what's going on right now? He asked the now wide-eyed adults. His tactical thinking and analytical skills are amazing. He's 4 and did a better job than most of our genin or chunin could ever do. Sarutobi thought to himself as he looked at his grandson. Yes, that's exactly what's going on. Alright, well, when I was in that forest, the number one thing the foxes taught me was to never abandon your pack. The village may hate me, but I can't abandon them. They are like my pack. So I'll train. I'll train and train till I can protect them. I'll protect them all and I'll protect Hinata-chan. I won't abandon my own. I won't abandon my friends, and I won't abandon this village. Naruto said with determination and fire that was unheard of in a 4-year-old. He looked at Sarutobi with a fire in his eyes that burned bright with grit and willpower. If Naruto-kun is doing it, then so am I. Hinata said as she scooted from behind her mother. Ka-chan told me to never ditch your friends. Naruto-kun is my only friend and I'm not going to leave him. I'll train with him. I'll learn with him. We do this together. No matter what. The young, usually timid girl shouted. She too had a fire in her eyes that showed how serious she was. Hinata-chan, you didn't stutter. 3. Naruto said with a big smile on his face. Hinata immediately started blushing and pushing her fingers together. She looked at her friend and smiled at him. Both grinned at each other and looked at Sarutobi, who was now looking at Hitomi and Makoto. After 10 minutes of tense silence, Hitomi signed to herself and rubbed her face. Say we did agree to this, how long would we have to get them to genin level? She asked the aged man. Since it's January now, the next exams are in Suna in March. They definitely wouldn't be ready by then. The exams after that are being held in Kiri in August. That gives you both 8 months to get them to Chunin level. Sarutobi explained to the 2 women. 8 months. Both Hitomi and Makoto yelled at the man who sighed. Naruto, how many clones can you make? Sarutobi asked the child who looked at him funny. Tell him 250, Akari said to the child in his head. She said I could make around 250, he replied, which made everyone in the room's eyes widen. Tell them that I can also sense Hinata's chakra density and that she can make 165 clones. She said to the boy. Ka-chan said that Hinata-chan could make 165 clones due to how naturally denser her chakra is. Hitomi was shocked that her daughter could make so many. It was a little known fact about the shadow clone jutsu, but it didn't matter how much chakra you had. It was a matter of how dense it was. The denser the chakra, the more close you could make with the same amount of chakra. 4. Wow, I can only make like 3 or 4, Hitomi said in shock at the revelation. I can make maybe 5 at the maximum, Makoto chimed in as she looked at the pair. I can make 25, but then I need to go to the hospital. To think that these two have that dense chakra at such a young age is incredible. The last people I knew that had this dense chakra were Hashirama-sama and Mito-sama. Sarutobi explained to the occupants of the room. Well, if you take into consideration that the caster gains everything that the clone learns and experiences, we could actually get them both the Chunin in 8 months, Makoto said as she looked at Naruto with a smirk. So are you both going to do it? Sarutobi asked with a face of pure hope. Hitomi sighed to herself and groaned. Yes, I'll train Hinata and I'll help train Naruto as well. We will follow the schedule that we came up with. Perfect. I can have them take the Genin exams in 5 months. And since Yuga and Kakashi aren't here, it would usually be the Hyuga who take care of Naruto, but Yuga said that Makoto could stay in the guest room with Naruto. Sarutobi said. Both Hitomi and Makoto nodded their heads and bowed. Hitomi thanked the Hokage for letting her see Naruto and told Hinata to say her goodbyes. Both hugged each other and then the Hyugas left the hospital room. While all this was happening, Hiruzen was thinking to himself about the training that Naruto and Hinata were going to undertake. I need to make it up to Naruto, but how? He has his clones, that's it. I'll take a few of his clones and teach him how to be Hokage. I'll teach him politics and the importance of how to run the village. I can even make him my apprentice and teach him everything I know. After what I heard today, he'll make a fantastic Hokage. The will of fire burns bright in him. Hokage-sama, is there anything else you need to talk to us about? Makoto asked the aged man who was seemingly lost in thought. Ah, yes, there was one thing. He walked over to Naruto and sat on his bed. Naruto, I have a proposition for you. Okay. Naruto looked at the man and he smiled at him. Do you know what the will of fire is? Sarutobi asked the child. No. What is it, Gigi? The will of fire is the belief that the entire village is a family. It means that everyone is connected like a tree. The villagers are the leaves, the shinobi are the bark and the Hokage is the trunk. The Hokage is in charge of the village and has to make sure that everyone is safe. From the villagers to the shinobi, they make sure that from the smallest leaf to the thickest piece of bark, is protected. He explained to the child who was looking at him with wide eyes. Wow, I want to be the trunk. I want to be Hokage. Naruto said with a wide smile on his face. Makoto was looking at Naruto and remembering another blonde child she remembered saying those exact same words. She could swear that she saw an overlay of Minato on top of Naruto as he said those words. Wherever you are Minato-kun, you would be so proud of him. She thought to herself and she whipped a tear from her eyes. I'm glad you want to be Hokage, Naruto, but there's a lot you need to know if you want to be Hokage, that's why I'm asking if you would like to become my apprentice. Makoto's eyes widened as she heard the request from Sarutobi. She knew that if Naruto became the Hokage's apprentice that he would basically be grooming the child for the hat. She didn't know whether to be happy about that or to wonder what Sarutobi saw in him. Sure, he had potential. Mountains of potential, but to groom him when he's 4. She didn't know. So she watched how the scene was going to play out. Is that like your student? Naruto asked with wide eyes. Yes, I would teach you the ins and outs of Konoha's laws, the shinobi world, the nations, and how to be Hokage. He explained to the child. Ah, I see, so he's not going to teach him jutsus or fighting. He's just going to teach him politics and leave the heavy stuff to me, Kakashi, and Yuga. Makoto thought to herself as she watched Naruto accept the offer. Sarutobi was overjoyed that he was going to get a student like Naruto. He saw the fire in his eyes that day and knew that he was Hokage material. Now all he had to do was teach him and train him. Well, Naruto, I've kept you here long enough. The doctors said that you could leave as soon as you woke up. Hiruzen said as he watched the boy hop out of his hospital bed. Alright Naru-chan, let's get you home and ready for bed. You've had a very long day and I can tell you're tired. Makoto said in a sweet voice as she picked up the now half-asleep Naruto. She looked at the Hokage who smiled at her and then shunshined back to Kakashi and Yugao's apartment. She made them both sandwiches for dinner and sent Naruto off to bed. After a few hours of reading, she walked to the guest room to see Naruto fast asleep. She changed into sleep clothing that she had brought with her in a scroll and sank into the bed. Naruto instinctively went and cuddled up to her chest and she smiled. You Naruto, she whispered as she stroked his head. You are going to be a legend one day. She kissed his forehead and went to sleep. Little did she know that her prediction could